Welcome students of Form 3 or 4 or 5 if you're trying to recapitulate the last 3 years of social studies. This program comes from the CXC, so if you're watching this from outside of Curacao, Belize or Barbados or Jamaica, this could also be very well helpful for you. Only the examples I use, I connected to the context of Curacao. So that's the main thing that isn't that relevant to you if you're watching this from those islands or countries. And we're talking about the following learning outcomes at the end of this topic. You will be able to, so you need this skill at the end of this topic, if I've done my job correctly, differentiate, so make the difference amongst the types of government systems found in the Commonwealth Caribbean. We're talking about constitutional monarchy, so a monarchy with a constitution, de Hollandese grondwet, lei fundamental, papimento, or republicanism. And we're going to talk about presidential republic and a parliamentary republic, to be exact. I'm also working for the Sky Pre-University. That's a humanist school located in Salinha, a neighborhood in Curacao. And we offer the CSEC program and the CAPE program. And this is part of my program of Form 3, but it also will be examined in Form 5, of course. So we talked about that in society there are often conflicting and competing interests of people that don't always work harmoniously, but sometimes works against each other. And government exists to bring these conflicting interests and competing interests together and harmonize them into governance and policy. So it tries to balance those two. So both groups, old people, young people, people from different professions, people from different neighborhoods, their interests can be balanced, actually. That's the purpose of governance and policy. And for the government work civil servants, government can consist out of a prime minister and ministers, and to help them in their policy, we have civil servants. In the Caribbean, we have different kinds of governance. As you can see here, some of them are British overseas territories, some of them are constitutional monarchies, like Curacao officially is, and some of them are republics. We are a constitutional monarchy. We are part of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and King Willem-Alexander is our head of state. And in our constitutional monarchy, we are able to vote, but in the past we had crown colony government, and people in parliament, the governors back then, during the 19th and the first half of the 20th century, were not able to vote. They were nominated, and the most important nominated figure in those British Caribbean islands was the Governor General, who was the head of state and also often the head of government, had a lot of power, and working for him, it was most of the time him, were the civil servants. They were also nominated, and they had know-how about finance, they had know-how about governing, so they helped the Governor General in governing those British Caribbean islands, parts of the Commonwealth Caribbean. And we can see here also in the Caribbean that we have different islands. We have like Cuba, that is still an authoritarian ruled country by the Communist Party. We have Curacao, that's over here, that's part of the Netherlands, the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and has a king as a head of state. It's a constitutional monarchy, but is at the same time autonomous. But we also have Puerto Rico, for instance, or Jamaica, and Puerto Rico is part of the United States and is a constitutional republic, and Jamaica is part of the Commonwealth Caribbean, although it is talking about leaving that Commonwealth Caribbean and becoming a truly independent republic. But I believe that's not the case yet. So let's look at a constitutional monarchy. And that is in your book in page 38. So if you want to take it in front of you, that's 38 in your book. Let's look at that. A monarchy is a system in which one individual is monarch or sovereign, usually for his or her whole life. This is changing right now, but until a few years ago, this was like the case. You should be a king or queen or empress or emperor for your whole life. So this symbolizes the crown. In a constitutional monarchy, a colony acquires, receives political independence. This mostly happened in the 50s and the 60s, in the 1950s, 1960s, from the colonial power. The crown-appointed governor is replaced by a governor general. Yeah, this happened mainly in the Commonwealth Caribbean, so we got a governor general, the person that we can see here, very important figure in the government, who is replaced by a governor general as head of state. This person is a symbolic representative of the monarch. Like you can see here, he or she replaces the crown, the monarch, the sovereign, and has only symbolic constitutional powers. Is a symbolic representative of the crown or the monarch, and has only symbolic or ritualistic constitutional powers. So very limited constitutional powers. So there's still a connection to the monarch or the sovereign of the previous colonial power. Like we can see here, our head of state is still King Willem-Alexander. He has very limited constitutional powers, barely any, but there's still a connection with the former colonizer. Even this has no direct bearing of the governance of a country. Well, it has some bearing, not much, but still it has influence on the way Curacao is governed. So we can see here, there's still a connection with the previous colonial power. It isn't a colonial power anymore, but there's still a connection with that power that used to be a colonial power, the monarch. And in our case, that is King Willem-Alexander. Yes, so it's symbolic representative, even if it had no direct bearing on the governing of a country. Let's continue. The Governor General acts on the advice of the Prime Minister. Again, we're talking specifically now about the Commonwealth, English-speaking Caribbean. So the Governor General has only symbolic power, and the decisions he or she makes is on the advice of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is in charge of the government of the colony. It used to be like this in Crown Colony governance. So in charge means leading, making the most important decisions of the government of the country, which is responsible for the internal, so thinking about education, but also thinking about taxes, thinking about the roads, the infrastructure, but also the external affairs of the country. So things like the army or the things that has to do with the sea, the Caribbean Sea, or the relationship with other countries. Jamaica and Barbados are examples of constitutional monarchies. So they fall under the head of state in Great Britain, being King Charles III, but this king is very limited by the Constitution. And Jamaica and Barbados are examples of this kind of governing system. We continue. A distinction, a strong difference. So we can make a difference between a monarchy and a constitutional monarchy. And distinction is a difficult word for what's the difference between those. How do you differentiate between them? How do you separate those? Well, it is all about the relationship of the monarch to the law. So when we look at a monarchy and a constitutional monarchy, we look at the relationship of the monarch to the law. That's very important. The relationship of the monarch to the law. Because in a monarchy, the monarch may be above the law or subject to the law. So it can differ, that it can go both ways. In a constitutional monarchy, the monarch is always subject to the law. So the monarch has very limited executive power, and his powers are strongly limited by a constitution. They're always subject to the law. Subject actually means that the king also has to listen to the law. He cannot do anything. He has no privileges besides having a lot of money perhaps, but he or she also has to listen to, has to abide by the law. And it's not, he cannot do things, or she cannot do things that are go against the law. He or she will receive certain repercussions. Republicanism. So we talked about the constitutional monarchy, we talked about the monarchy, and now we're going to talk about republicanism. Countries where the monarch has been replaced by a president as head of state are republics. So countries where the monarch has been replaced by a president as head of state are also called republics. And there are two kinds of republics in the Caribbean. So in the Caribbean, there are two types of republic. One, a presidential republic, that's the first one, run on the presidential system. The head of government, it's one type of republic is the presidential republic, run on a presidential system, where the head of state or executive president is also head of government. So he combines those functions, head of government, but also head of state. That's the president in this case, has full executive powers. So this person, head of government, head of state, has full head of government, head of state, has full executive powers and full constitutional powers. So not limited. The Constitution gives him all the powers he needs to govern the country. And the government of Guyana is based on this system. The second version of a republic found in the Caribbean is a parliamentary republic with a parliamentary system. The head of state holds a ceremonial or symbolic function. So in this type of republic, the head of state holds a ceremonial symbolic function. There is a head of state, a president maybe, or another figure, but his or her role is ceremonial, symbolic, and has very limited executive powers. And the prime minister is head of government and therefore has the full executive authority. And Trinidad and Tobago and the Commonwealth of Dominica hold such a government system. Like you can see here, here's Parliament of Jamaica looking at the flag, and here you have the Prime Minister of Jamaica, who is also head of government and also has executive authority. I hope this video was informative and that you now can differentiate amongst the type of government systems in the government Caribbean. If you want to subscribe, you can do that below. If you want to post some questions, you can ask it below and let me know below if you have like improvements or my pronunciation was off or whatever. And enjoy your morning, afternoon, or evening. And I have to see you soon. I hope to see you soon during class. Goodbye.